You know that classic eye chart, right? The one with the giant E on top? We all think that if you can read that bottom line, your vision is perfect. But what if I told you that even with 20/20 vision, you might be missing a massive part of the picture? Today, we're going to dive into what that standard test leaves out and what really makes for good vision. You know, this is something eye care professionals hear constantly. A patient comes in, they ace the standard vision test, they can read that 20/20 line, no problem, but they still complain that something's just not right with their vision. It's a super frustrating puzzle, and it really gets to the core of what we're going to unpack here. So that's the big question, isn't it? If having 20/20 vision isn't the whole story, then what are we missing? Well, as we're about to see, the standard test is great at measuring one very important part of vision, but it totally ignores another piece that has a huge impact on how we see the world every single day. So here's our game plan. We're going to start by looking beyond that 20/20 line to really get what it does measure, which is something called visual acuity. Then we'll introduce the big missing piece, contrast sensitivity. And finally, we'll talk about why how you test is just as important as what you test. All right, let's kick things off by going beyond that familiar 20/20 line. See, to understand what it's missing, we've got to get crystal clear on what it's actually telling us in the first place. So this first part is all about laying that foundation. Okay, so the first big concept is the one we all kind of know, even if we don't know its official name, visual acuity. And the tool for the job is, of course, the famous Snellen chart. It's been the go-to since like 1862. But what does acuity really mean? To put it simply, visual acuity is all about sharpness. It's about detail. It's basically your eye's resolving power. Can your eye tell that two tiny dots right next to each other are actually two separate dots? That's what the eye chart is testing. It's all about clarity. Now, the science behind this is actually pretty cool. The Snellen chart was designed so that someone with normal vision can make out details that take up this tiny, tiny slice of their visual field, an angle of just 1 minute of arc. To give you some perspective, that's just 1/60th of a single degree. That incredibly small measurement is the benchmark for what we call 20/20 vision. So you've probably heard both 6/6 and 20/20 before. They mean the exact same thing, just in different units. In a lot of the world, they use the metric system, so you stand 6 meters away. In the US, it's the imperial system, so it's 20 feet. 20/20 vision just means that from 20 feet away, you can see what a normal person is expected to see at that same distance. Simple as that. But here's the thing. The classic Snellen chart, it's not perfect, not by a long shot. For one, the jump in difficulty from one line to the next isn't consistent. And you'll notice the number of letters changes on each line. All of this makes it harder to score accurately and compare results reliably. And that's where a more modern chart called the logMAR chart comes in. Look at the difference. The difficulty increases in perfectly even steps between lines, and every single line has the same number of letters, 5. This design makes it way more reliable, which is why it's now the gold standard for any serious clinical trial or vision research. Okay, so we've got a better test for clarity. Awesome. But what if clarity isn't the real problem? This is where we get to that big missing piece I was talking about, a concept called contrast sensitivity. So what is it? Well, it's not about how clearly you see something. It's about how well you can see it against its background. It's your ability to pick up on subtle differences in shading. Think shades of gray. This is really a measure of the quality of your vision, not just the quantity of detail you can see. I love this analogy. Visual acuity lets you see the individual whiskers on a cat in bright sunshine. Contrast sensitivity is what lets you spot the shape of that gray cat when it's curled up in a dark corner of the room. And here's the kicker. A lot of eye diseases will start to affect your contrast sensitivity long before they ever touch your 20/20 score on an eye chart. What's so fascinating is how much this can tell a doctor. By testing your contrast vision across different levels of detail, from really fine, high-frequency patterns to broad, low-frequency shapes, they can find clues for specific conditions. Trouble with fine details might point towards something like optic neuritis. If you're struggling to see big, washed-out shapes, that could be a sign of cataracts. An overall drop across the board can be an early warning for things like glaucoma. And this is the most important part, really. This test connects directly to real-world situations. Think about driving at night, or trying to walk around in the fog, or even just recognizing someone's face from across the room. All of those things depend way more on your contrast sensitivity than on your ability to read tiny black letters on a white chart. So we've got the what, acuity, and contrast. But you know what? None of it means anything without the how. If you don't standardize the testing conditions, the results you get can be totally useless or, even worse, misleading. For a vision test to be worth anything, you need 3 things locked down. First, lighting. It has to be bright and even, basically like daylight, with absolutely no glare or weird shadows. Second, distance. It has to be precise. That 20 feet or 6 meters is there for a reason. And finally, you need a strict protocol. Test one eye at a time, cover the other one properly, and give the exact same instructions every time. And honestly, there are so many other little things that can throw off a result. Is the patient exhausted? Are their eyes dry and scratchy? Is there a window causing a glare on the chart? Are they leaning in? Even how clean the testing lenses are can make a huge difference. You really have to control for all these variables. So let's just boil this all down. Visual acuity is about clarity. The question is, can you see the letter? Contrast sensitivity is about quality. The question is, how well can you see it? One isn't more important than the other. They're just 2 different but equally crucial sides of what we call sight. And this takes us right back to where we started, to that patient who reads the 20/20 line but still feels like they can't see properly. Now we know why, right? Their problem might have nothing to do with clarity. It might be all about contrast. You have to think beyond that one single line. So I'll just leave you with this thought. Your patient nails the eye chart, they see 20/20. Is your exam of their vision actually done? After everything we've talked about, I think the answer is a pretty clear no. Real sight, it's so much more than just a line of letters on a chart.